a few years later, my allergies were getting really so horrible. I was miserable constantly and felt very closed in. And my friend Pamela said, you should go see her again. That time I went up to visit Pamela.
Pamela is a very good friend.
She's the best. She's my chief instigator. That's what I call her. But I went up, and this time I had an in-person session, and I didn't even say I'm here to deal with the allergies. I literally just said, whatever shows up, let's deal with it. The first thing the woman asked me was, what's your belief system? And I'm thinking, well, I was raised in the Episcopal Church, but I don't really believe in God. It's more like, the universe and the force, and she was like, no, that's not what I mean. Never mind. And so she started working on me. And a little bit later, she apparently got the message. She works with angels, just a lot of angels, that my belief system was that I should be afraid of everything in the world. So my belief system was the world is a scary place. And I know now from my own training that allergies are always about fear. It's always a way of keeping ourselves away from whatever it is we fear. So in 1 hour, without telling her that the allergies were the reason I was there, and without her ever talking about allergies, she helped me release the fears. She gave me some tools to continue helping to release the fears over time, and no allergies since then.
Hello and welcome back to The Princess and the Bee. I am so excited to be here with you because today I have someone extraordinary. Laurin Wittig was one of my former clients. She is a communication queen. She has literally transformed in the year that I have known her. And it is such a pleasure to see and be here with you today, Laurin, to be in the presence of the queen that you have literally become.
Well, I couldn't have done it without you, Kim, but I appreciate the kind words and I borrow your belief pretty regularly. So I'm very happy to be here too.
And that was something that Laurin, I just was recently blessed to be on Laurin's podcast. And she mentioned on her podcast that she had to borrow my belief system in her. And so feel free to also adopt that belief. Like if you don't feel like you believe in you enough, go ahead and borrow mine, because I know that so many amazing things are possible for you, especially if you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah. No, and your energy and your belief and your tenacity in pushing gently but firmly to bring the best out is amazing. And I'm so grateful for it because it really has transformed me in my business.
Laurin, walk me through, because I know your journey. I was there with you, but a little bit of your journey of where you were when you started, what you do, why you do what you do, and that big old giant vision and mission that you have on your heart.
Yeah, and it's starting to move. Well, when you came into my sphere of attachments, I had been a practicing energetic healer for about 2 years. And I had really learned how to be a healer, but I had not learned anything about running a business. And so I was really stuck, especially when the pandemic hit. I had a very small clientele. Most of them really didn't want to work with me by distance, which I do a lot and works really well. But so I went in sort of into hibernation mode for a while, as I think a lot of us did. But then when I started to go, I should be using this time to really understand how I want to relaunch my business when the time comes. And I've worked with a number of coaches to heal myself, healers particularly. But I really came to realize that I didn't know how to run a business. I've never run a business. I published books. I knew how to run that kind of business for myself, but it didn't apply to what I was doing now. And the vision I have for what I'm here to do, because my vision is, as you know, as it poured out of me one day in one of our sessions, I have a big vision for getting my voice out in the world and helping people to just wake up and see the world for what it can be. If we all work together to make it that way, and how powerful each individual is when they reach that point of accepting that they have a purpose here in life. And for most of us, that purpose is to have an experience, but also to learn from it and create something even more beautiful than we may have now, and a lot more beautiful than a lot of us have now. So that's been sort of where I came to you with just no idea. You said the word systems, and I was like, wait, what?
I said, like every entrepreneur's least favorite word. They're like, why do I need systems?
It is my favorite word now, because putting systems in, and you helped me do the learning curve of what is a system, what kinds of systems do I need to have in place, the tools to do that, the reasons for doing it. And so I've spent really the year since we started working together putting systems in place. And I am now addicted to systems.
Welcome to the
club. If I can automate it, I want to automate it. If I can delegate it, I want to delegate it, So whereas before I was trying to do everything myself, and because I really didn't understand what I needed to be doing, I was kind of blind. I wasn't doing anything in a way that worked for me because I just didn't know what I was doing. So that piece of the work I did with you has been truly transformational.
And you've since gone on to launch a podcast as well.
Yes. And I'm having so much fun. And you are entirely responsible for that happening. I will say, Communications Queens, if you're listening to this and you've never heard of it, or you are thinking about taking it, go right now, go do it, because it's amazing. And it's fun. Kim makes everything really fun, even when she's holding your feet to the fire a bit. It's still fun. There's still a lot of joy in the process. But Communications Queens was another game changer for me, because you taught us how to be guests, how to use guest podcasting as a way to get ourselves out in front of people. And one of my missions from my guides and spirits is to get my voice out in the world. And so I started with the guesting, and I was having a lot of fun with that. And I just kind of started thinking, I really want to be able to also have conversations with people I want to have conversations with. So I got a very strong message from my guides in meditation one day. It's time to start the podcast. And you had given us a great starting place for that as well. I think because so many of us were asking for it in your first class. So I had a good place to start from it. And I had the systems in place already from Communications Queens for being a guest. So it was easy to sort of take those systems and just tweak them just a little bit to turn it into another Trello board, my favorite tool. So that made it easy for me to launch. And also, again, that borrowing belief, I just trusted that I could jump in and start it, and it could evolve. I didn't have to have it perfect. It didn't have to be, exactly what it's supposed to be. I have a ton of friends who were like, yeah, I'll be on your podcast. And you, thank you for reaching out and saying, hey, I'd like to be on your podcast.
But I practice what I preach. I'm like, hey, she hasn't asked me to be on her podcast. I'm just going to, reach out, because sometimes that's really what you have to do is, like, sometimes people don't know to ask, or sometimes they feel intimidated to ask, or sometimes like I've had come on other people's podcasts as a guest, and they're like, I don't know how you found me, but your story is so perfect for my audience. And I'm like, because you have to have the courage, which is one of the key high performance habits, to be able to just reach out and ask.
Yeah.
And most people are scared to do that asking piece because they're scared of the rejection. And yeah, I've been rejected, but I don't actually deal with that because of the system that I have in place with my assistant. So I don't have to see the rejections.
That's right.
But I do sometimes go back and review that when I'm in a good space so that I don't get my ego all butthurt. And seeing the rejections, I'm like, oh, when I look at the podcast, when I look at who that person is, who that podcaster is, I'm like, I would have never been a fit for them in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, my style does not match at all with their audience. I would have been wasting their time and my time. Thank you for the rejection. Because when you find those people that you are aligned with, they're like, where have you been all my life?
Yes. Yeah. My very first reach out in terms of asking to be a guest, see if I could pitch to somebody, using your system, which was beautiful because you gave us all the, the swipe copy for all of the different emails and stuff. So that was super easy. But I found on the list that you gave us a person who I had met when I was working with a journaling coach, and just very briefly, and there was a name recognition because her last name was my best friend's last name, that kind of thing. So I remembered her. She was on your list of you gave us like, I don't know, 100, I don't know how many were on that list.
It was 1,000. Yeah. The Kickstart list. Yeah.
Yeah.
1,111 because, 11.
Yeah. But I was reading down, just sort of getting familiar with what was on the list and looking for what might be a good fit, in terms of the topics and things. And I hit her name and I was like, I know her. I mean, like just on a Zoom, group Zoom call, we didn't have any conversation, but I know who she is. I know what her energy is like, and I'd be a great fit for her. And so I reached out to her. I got an immediate like boomerang email back. Hell yes. And she didn't remember me at all from that call, but it was such a success for my first time out that it was like, it was a super confidence builder, but it was also that meshing of, I had just followed the energy up. There's the one. And it gave me so much more confidence to reach out to others that I maybe didn't have quite as strong a hit on, but looked like I might be a good match. And most of the ones I've reached out to, which hasn't been a whole lot actually, but I've been invited to be on.
Yeah.
And so that's so much easier than hosting because there's so much less preparation,
right? Like you just show up
and answer the questions, So that gave me a big confidence boost, just to reach out and ask and not take it personally if I don't get a response, or it's just like, okay, it wasn't right. And that's a lesson that I'm pulling into everything I'm doing now. And that's also very powerful.
And I think my favorite piece of the story that you failed to mention is that you didn't have your mic yet.
I didn't. I forgot that. That's right.
Like I remember you posting in Communication Queens, booked my first podcast interview. Gotta get my mic now.
Thankfully, we can get things in 2 days now, or most
Thankfully,
of the time.
Thankfully, Amazon Prime delivers speedily.
I have my beautiful blue Yeti Nano, whatever it is, and it works great, and I love it. And I actually get a lot of feedback about how good the audio is. So there you go.
And you take that audio up just a notch from like being regular computer sound system, it changes the game.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that you took action, aligned action before you were ready, like before you had a microphone.
And I am bringing that into so many different places now. I get a lot of things in meditation, as you know me. I talk to spirit guides, and I do all that lovely stuff. But last week I got in meditation the full structure system for a new offering. And I happened to have a call like 3 days later, and I had kind of gone through and sketched out what I thought I was going to do with it. But I pitched it to her. It doesn't even exist yet. And she was like, not quite ready for it. But I was like, I'm just going to throw it out there and see what happens.
Give it a go. Oh, I love that. Laurin, like that is like leaps and bounds from when we started working together.
I know. I am so much more, what do I want to say? I'm more confident in every part of my business, in large part because I had that, I think it was a 12-week program that you were running at the time, one-on-one with you, the quick, 30 minutes, it went really fast, but so many different systems that you introduced me to, and ways of thinking about things, and pushing me to be courageous. And I don't think I realized at the time how each one of those pieces was building on itself. But boy, by the time it all sunk in, and I had worked through all the things that you had given me, and I've read a lot of the books that you had recommended, and I started implementing the systems. I hired an assistant. Thank you, Kim.
You made my heart so happy. And I mean, you are one of my first clients who has hired the first person and had them be a rock star knockout out of the gate.
And you get
Most
total
people
credit.
take like one or two
Hmm.
trials before they get it, but you implemented. And I think the thing with, especially because of what you do and what you're so skilled at, aligning with the energy,
Hmm.
connecting with the guides, and being able to find that when you set your vision on what you want, you bring in spiritual help to also help
Oh
with
yeah.
that, which magnifies the possibility of, I don't like to say getting it right, but getting it right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you had really opened my eyes when you talking about values first when I was going to put the ad up for the assistant. Of course, you told me which website I could use and all that kind of good practical stuff too. But you had really drilled it into me to go values first, and then what are the skills I was looking for, and it just immediately clicked for her and for me.
Mhm.
And we've been working together for probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 months now. And it's been really remarkable. And I love being able to help other people gain new skills. I've been a teacher in many iterations of teaching, but one of my joys, particularly with women, is bringing more power to them by teaching them or enabling them to learn something new. So Aileen is my assistant. And when I started to get into the podcasting stuff, I had hired her to put all my systems, automate everything for me and do some work on my website. And I said to her, "Are you interested in learning something new?" And she said, "Oh yeah, of course." I said, "Could you help me with the podcast guesting project?" "Oh yes, of course." And then it was not too long after where I went, "Would you like to learn how to be a producer?" And because she's in the Philippines, first of all, I can afford her.
Mhm.
Second of all, she has access to things that by our classes, that by our prices is like, of course you take that, it's super cheap. So she was able to find a class specifically about podcasting for virtual assistants, being a producer. And it cost $19.
Mhm.
So I paid for the class, I paid for her time to take the class, and she is now my producer. And so she's doing the
Congratulations.
lion's share of the work. And then I also got to hire my daughter to be my audio engineer, which just tickles me to death.
And I think that that's one of my favorite parts is like because I don't believe, and you know this, that success needs to come at the expense of our families, at
Mhm.
the expense of our health, at the expense of our bodies. And more often than not, I've had clients who reunite, reconnect, or connect just in a different, deeper way with their children
Yes.
simply because they're in their power, and the way that they're approaching their business shifts the dynamic in the relationship.
It does.
And so you brought on your daughter and you had her on as a podcast guest,
And
which I just love.
it's my favorite one. No offense, it's my favorite one that I've done so far. And the other piece of that is my son, who loves podcasts. When his sister's episode came out, I said, "You need to listen to this. I know that, you don't believe in all the stuff that I do, but you need to listen to this. It's your sister." And it really was I was so proud of her. It was the first time I had had a real adult conversation with her.
Oh, you
Not mom
hit me in
to
the
kid.
feels.
And it was wonderful. Well, my son was here this weekend and he had since then listened to all of the episodes. I think there were 7 out 3 times. And he's got his big analytical mind going. And he sat down with me and gave me his critique of them. And I use critique in the term of a writer because it wasn't this is bad. It was this part didn't really work for me, and maybe if you tried this, or I really think if you added this kind of solo episode between some of the things that are more hard to understand, that it would help people like me to have. It just blew my mind. And I'm taking notes. And he's like, "I hope I'm not hurting your feelings." I was like, "Bring it on." And it was the same effect with him. It was a real adult peer-to-peer kind of conversation that I really had not had with him. So it's transformed my relationship with both my kids already, just doing the podcast. And it's great. And not that it wasn't bad before, but it's this adult relationship
It's a
now.
different relationship, and just the ability that you've been able to approach it with that mindedness. Oh, that
Yeah.
I look forward to my children being able to have the space. Right now, 4 and 10 months, the adult conversations are really
Mine are
happening.
33 and 29. So it's a while.
Yeah, so I got a good 20, 30 years
We'll get
before
there.
that. But to look forward to that and to be able to
Yeah.
see that. And that's always like that for me, that's a huge piece of my business and what I'm building is the impact and legacy of what it's going to leave for my future generations, and not just my children, but
Yeah.
future, to change the genetic wiring and our DNA
Mm-hmm.
5 generations. So when we start thinking with that vision of that level of impact of how is this not going to impact like just my kids, but my grandchildren, my great
Yes.
grandchildren, like what are they going to say about grandma being the game changer of generations? Like
Right.
that's that.
That's why what we're doing now is so important, because we're reaching a crescendo of, crap.
Yeah.
If I can be honest, I'd say other words, but I think that's a good one. And it's up to us right now for the future of humankind. I mean, not just our own family lineage, but humankind to find a better way.
Mm.
And, the people like you and I have come in at this time to be way showers and light bringers and to help lead that change process. And I love this particular format because it does spread our energy, our voice, our work much further than we can do in person. And I'm in love with this format. I just have to tell you.
Yeah, like once you recognize the impact that it can have and how simple it can be, it's a
Mhm.
game changer. And I think that you have tapped so deeply into that vision and light, and you already were the game changer and the breaker of cycles because you did that with your children. I mean, that's what got you into the healing work that you do. Can you
Yeah.
share a bit more about
Yeah.
that journey that led you into the work that you're doing now?
Yeah. Well, I started even before my kids, because when I was 21, I did what's called 12th stepping, which is an AA term, my dad, which is saying, Dad, I know you're an alcoholic and I want you to get help. And so at 21, that was my family went, you're the only one he'll listen to. You have to go do that. And so that was the first time where I had used my voice to change something. And he was sober for 20 years before he died. So that was the first time I realized that I could have an influence on things. But when my kids come around, it's different with your kids because you feel so responsible for it. And my daughter came in, she's mostly healthy, but she had a couple of little odd allergies that I had to convince the doctors was a problem and not just diaper rash, this kind of thing. She had a cough for a long time and it was related to fluoride.
Mm.
And I took my detective work to figure that stuff out. But when my son came in, he came in sick from the get-go, and had life-threatening allergies, severe asthma as an infant.
That's
And
terrifying.
so, I worked with the medical system for a while because that's what I knew. And babies, you don't take any chances with them. And we got to a point when he was about 18 months old where the doctors weren't calling it asthma yet, but he was having breathing problems. I finally said, okay, if it were asthma, what should I do? That was the first step. And then, so that led me to an allergist. And that's when we found out the severity of the allergies. And then the allergist wanted to keep putting him on stronger and stronger medications. He's like two years old at this point. They want to put him on prednisone. They want to put him on these like medications that fortunately I had the background to understand what they do. I would go and research them. We had the internet. It wasn't very robust yet, but we had the internet. So I would go on and the doctor would say, I want to put him on this, med, when I knew he was getting better already. That was the kicker for me. And it was, stunt your growth. It was learning disabilities. And I was like, no, there's got to be some other way to do this. And so I started researching Chinese medicine. I don't know why. things come to me when I need them. And at the same time, I told my dad, I said, we're really looking to see if we can find some sort of alternative, modality that we can bring in to help with this, because they're only treating the symptoms and they're getting worse. We need to do something about what's causing it. And he just happened to have a friend who he met through AA, who had just started up a consulting business to connect people like us with people like the Chinese doctors, alternative practitioners, and she vetted them. So she hooked us up with Dr. Wu, who we worked with for a number of years, but he worked as a consultant to the NHS, what is it, National Institutes of Health up in DC, which is where we were. He had been through medical school, Western medical school, as well as the Chinese acupuncture and herbal medical school, because you have to do both in China. And then he came here. He was amazing. And he was the only one that she had talked to who would work with a toddler. And so we started acupuncture and herbals. And in 2 weeks, my son's immune system kicked in. He had color in his face. He was hungry. He was active where he'd been pretty lethargic. It was just, and that I was like, oh, okay, there's something serious here. I ended up going for my allergies, and that helped a lot. And it really set us on this path to, there's got to be more than symptom relief. And so and I don't remember your question now, but that's.
Oh, well, I mean, you went down the path of researching like a parent does.
Mm-hmm.
And, when your kid is sick, or when doctors say that, oh, there's this thing that's wrong with your child, like, you do everything you can to find anything that can be a solution.
Right.
And so you went down that rabbit hole. How did you transition from being a best-selling author, like beautifully written fiction, into saying, you know what, I'm going to choose that healing is my career?
I think I was always looking for a way to use healing to help people. I thought about medical school. And so that's always been in the back of my head. I thought, after working with the acupuncturist, I thought maybe I'll become an acupuncturist, but I didn't. But over the years, my health, we left DC. We didn't have Dr. Wu to help us anymore. So over the years, my health had really started to fall apart. And then perimenopause hit me with like a ton of bricks. And perfect storm, I ended up with pneumonia for 6 weeks one winter. I couldn't go outside in the spring at all because the allergies were just so horrible. And the universe provides. My best friend lives up in the DC area, and I was talking about how bad my asthma and my allergies were getting, and she said, "Well, I just had a session with this really cool healer, and why don't you have a session with her?" And it's like, "Oh, well, I don't have time to come up there." She said, "She can do it over the phone." I'm like, "What?" But I was desperate. It was just like with my kid. I was desperate. There was no more medications I could take for pills or for allergies. And in fact, I ended up in the ICU when I decided to go get shots and got tested. I had an anaphylactic reaction to the first round of testing shots, so I was like, nope, time for something else. And I'm bad about doing things for others, but not for myself. So it hadn't really clicked in that I need to find, a healer for me. So my friend Pamela, hooked me up with this woman who happened to live down the street from another friend of mine up in Northern Virginia.
Small world.
But I got on the phone with her, and I told her that my asthma was just getting worse and worse, and it wasn't being controlled. And so that basically, I said, that's what I need help with, is I have this asthma and I can't breathe. In 1 hour on the phone, and I'm with her, she's some telling me what she's doing, and other times she's saying, okay, now blow out. And, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to trust the process here. In an hour, I felt so much better. I had cried. I had catharsis. She told me essentially that my mother was sitting on my chest. And anybody who's known me for the last 10 years knows my mother has been, rest in peace, Mom. But it was, the asthma was gone. And it's never come back. And this has been easily 10 years now. And so again, I don't always remember to do things for myself. A few years later, my allergies were getting really so horrible. I was miserable constantly and felt very closed in. And my friend Pamela said, you should go see her again. And that time I went up to visit Pamela.
Pamela's a very good friend.
She's the best. She's my chief instigator. That's what I call her. But I went up, and this time I had an in-person session, and I didn't even say I'm here to deal with the allergies. I literally just said, whatever shows up, let's deal with it. The first thing the woman asked me was, what's your belief system? And I'm thinking, well, I was raised in the Episcopal Church, but I don't really believe in God. It's more like, the universe and the force, and she was like, no, that's not what I mean. Never mind. And so she started working on me. And a little bit later, she apparently got the message. She works with angels, just a lot of angels, that my belief system was that I should be afraid of everything in the world. So my belief system was the world is a scary place. And I know now from my own training that allergies are always about fear. It's always a way of keeping ourselves away from whatever it is we fear. So in 1 hour, without telling her that the allergies were the reason I was there, and without her ever talking about allergies, she helped me release the fears. She gave me some tools to continue helping to release the fears over time, and no allergies since then. I have a little bit, I will admit, I have a little bit of itchy eyes and the occasional sneeze during the height of tree and grass season. But ragweed used to be one of my worst, which is late summer, fall, where I live. Nothing. I don't have any problem with that anymore. And this has been, again, this is probably 7 or 8 years. I was hooked at that point. I was like, okay, I'm going to stop resisting this and just, start learning. And, the universe provides. And I already was going to a wonderful massage therapist here who ran a yoga class that I love called she invented called Yotai. And she was like, we were talking, she was the person I could talk to about this stuff. And then she had another student come in, and she was doing this stuff for 18 years at that point. And so Anna put the two of us together, and it's just been ever since. I've been taking classes, and I have a community, and I ran a wise women circle for 2 years before the pandemic. And now I'm doing this. So it's been, I feel like I spent a lot of time sort of edging my way up, and now I've hit that rocket point. So awesome. Yeah, it's been a long journey, but I got there.
And I know for some, like if you're listening to this and you've got that little bit of what my husband calls the Gen Xer skeptic, like voice coming into your head, there's a fantastic series on Gaia, which is a network called Missing Links by Greg Braden, that focuses on peer-reviewed science of how these principles of healing work due to a principle called quantum entanglement. And so physics, especially quantum physics, is showing how we are all deeply, intimately connected through this divine matrix, this force that is very palpable in us, through us, around us, that connects us to one another. And so if that little skeptical brain is going off and you're like, I need some science to back this woo.
Who is this kook?
then I highly recommend that series, because he breaks it down in a very scientific manner for those who aren't like fully in, or who are looking for alternative solutions, but don't know quite like, wait, somebody just is going to like talk to me over the phone. And like,
I know. It's wild.
And it is wild. I've done it. I've had it, well, not done it, but I've had it done to me, with me, because it's not really a to me process. It's a with me process. You have to go with it as well. And be accepting of it, just like with anything. But in the same space, that is a fantastic series. And then a book by Dr. Bruce Lipton called The Biology of Belief is also another great one. And then Dr. John Sarno also has a fantastic book called The Divided Mind, and Healing Back Pain, which talks a bit more about the mind-body intimate connection.
Yes.
And because of that mind-body intimate connection, then the quantum principles of quantum physics that are from that entanglement principle, that we are all deeply and intimately connected on some level. And so we can feel, for those who are highly sentient, and for those who have tuned into the energy and trained like Laurin has, to be able to access that depth of being understanding and feeling.
There's also a wonderful book, if I can add to your
Yes,
list.
oh please.
I can't remember the woman's name, but the book is called The Power of Eight. And she is a scientist and she has done meditation for healing, but she's very careful about how she does it. She's very uses a scientific process. It's peer reviewed. It's all this stuff. It's fascinating and it's an easy read. And it's a lot about how you can work at a distance, which is something I do a lot, especially during the pandemic.
So one of my favorite things that I know you love to talk about that I couldn't let you go on this podcast without sharing
Okay.
is how do you talk to your guides? Like you just like
Yeah.
who are these guides?
Yeah.
For those,
Okay.
for those who want to have that greater access to that spiritual dimension.
Right. I'm very lucky in that I get given examples of how this works. Like I had on the phone session about my asthma and it was like, okay, that worked. I believe now that that can work. I was in Montana with two friends. One friend lives out there and we've always known she's a little psychic. But we were talking about something and all of a sudden Archangel Michael started speaking through her and gave us directions about you need to record this, you need to listen to it. And so I saw an active experience of a guide, because they can be, archangels, angels, rocks, they can be from anything. So I had experienced that sort of before it happened to me. But for me, it started happening more in meditation than anything else, because I have a very chatty mind. And
We all do.
Yeah.
That monkey mind.
Yes. So getting really quiet is not something I do without consciously doing it. And I started just getting sort of messages about other people. For one thing, I remember once I was worried about my niece because she was having some mental health issues, and I just wanted to do a little, focus on her work. I was working with the energies already. And so I just, in that, I started talking to her, but I was shocked at how wise I was. And I told my friend Pamela about what I did. And she said, "Oh, well, that's your higher self. You're just getting information from your higher self," which is that part of us that has been around forever. It's eternal. And so there's a lot of wisdom that's collected over lifetimes. And so that was one of the first aha moments. But also I learned that I can ask questions, and I use a pendulum. I hold up like this because you get a little pendulum, and you have to train it to tell you a yes or no, to show you what it means when you get a yes answer or no. And I love that because I started asking questions. Am I hearing a spirit? Yes. Have you spoken to me before? Yes. This kind of stuff. Now it's a constant conversation that I have with them. I've been working with them so long, and I honestly, I think my very first guide was Archangel Michael. I didn't like working with him. He was very linear, very like, you're going to do this, 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 and this, and that's not the way it worked. And so then I started working with Archangel Uriel, who I adore because he's got this sort of hippy dippy kind of feel to him, for me at least. But I work with a shaman who I met in the woods, spiritually. I call him grandfather. I have a wise woman who I was told to call Golden Eagle Woman, who I met during a shamanic journey. They have been with me a long time. I have collected more and more guides as I go. And I know now that a lot of my writing, particularly the last 3 books that I wrote, was channeled. It just came from spirit, because they were the easiest ones that I've ever written. All the heroines have some sort of metaphysical gift. And it's just, so I've been doing it unconsciously for a long time. And I think everybody probably is. But you can consciously talk to them. And there's lots of different ways to do it. Meditation is a great way to open the conversation and just ask. When I go into meditation, if I want to talk to one of my guides, often I'll just go, okay, I would really like to hear from, while I meditate. And it's that little voice in your head that isn't real you, sounds a lot like you, but it's not really you. And the other piece of that really helped me was because am a writer, I type like the wind, and I don't have to look at the keyboard. So I would have conversations through the keyboard. I would ask, who would like to talk to me today? And then I would type whatever came into my head. And then I would ask another question and type, and I would not edit or check typos or anything. I'd have my eyes closed. But when I read it back, it was not my voice. It was not my syntax. It was not my word choices that were in those answers. And that was really proof in the pudding. So you don't have to type. You can do it with, pen and paper, but.
Well, I love the fact that you type, because there is the perception, especially in personal development world, that it's like writing because your hands are connected to your heart, like they're stemming from your heart chakra. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that just means writing on a piece of paper. Like, I think it can also be typing. We have an energetic connection with things, thanks to quantum entanglement, with things. And that the connection that we have to our computer, especially if we're doing deeply personal work, meaningful work, there's going to be a connection there as well. And you may have more of a connection with that than you do to a piece of paper that someone said, oh, you should be doing it this way. There's like, do it the way that feels good for you.
Yes, exactly.
Like, there's a difference between, oh, you should do something this way, like in learning a system, and oh, there's the right versus a right and wrong way. Like, I think all systems need to be adapted for the person that's using them. So like in Communication Queens and through the Queen Bee coaching that I do, I give you systems. It's your choice to adapt them, use them, like play with them. Like when I give my clients spreadsheets, I know that, like, I don't think in spreadsheets. Most of my clients don't think in spreadsheets. I have had one client in 5 years who thinks in spreadsheets.
Yeah. No.
Like most of my clients are storytellers.
Yeah.
And in their own way. And so they don't think in spreadsheets, but you can adapt that, the way that you do some things. So I always say, if you're going to spreadsheet out some goals and some, metrics for your business, journal them. Yeah. Let it flow out first, whether that's on your computer or in a journal, and then, add them to this system. But being able to look at any system and adapting it for you so that it works the best for you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And there are a bazillion ways you can communicate with your guides.
Yeah.
If I can just pitch something here real quick.
Yeah, please.
My website, and I'm sure that'll be in the show notes. There's a pop-up that comes up that does ask you to sign up for my mailing list, but in exchange, I'm offering you my top 3 ways that I like to communicate with my guides. So it's just a real short piece that will teach you, and you can try them, see what works for you. And that's not by any means all of the ways that I communicate with my guides, but it's my top 3 go-tos, especially when I'm teaching clients how to do this. So just throw that out there. And I love that you
give 3, and it's not a right, wrong situation. No. It's feeling out what's best for you.
Yeah. Everybody has, some people love pendulums. Some people are like, they don't work for me, or I can make them do what I want them to. I get a lot of people who say that. So, fine, don't use that. I love oracle cards. I don't do tarot because it's too complicated for me. I don't have time for that. But there's so many beautiful decks of oracle cards or angel cards that are far simpler to use. And I just, every now and then I go, I'm going to pull some cards today. And that's, and those are more story-based really. So, that's part of it, but there's so many ways. And I'm sure there are ways that I'm not aware of too. So, but I love it. It simplifies life so much when you get validation from spirit, or you get suggestions. I got a whole new program, from spirit. I was like, oh, I didn't have to figure that one out.
And I think the thing is that you also had the courage to put it out there.
Yeah.
So that's, getting those suggestions is great, but what are you going to do with them?
Yes. And I ask regularly, if there's anything that would be good for me today, let me know. That kind of thing. So that asking piece is also another big piece of communicating with your guides.
I'm a big fan of communicating before bed. Like just asking a question of my subconscious mind, God, angels, universe, subconscious mind. This is a question that I actually want to sleep on. And I know that as a cosmic being, because we are all cosmic beings, that my subconscious mind will go to town and go to
Yes.
work while I'm
Yeah.
sleeping.
Yeah.
So this whole like burn yourself out, I'll sleep when I'm dead. No, sleep is like one of your greatest assets that
Oh,
you
I
can
know.
have.
I know. Sleep is so important. I do so much of my personal work, my healing work happens when I'm sleeping. I mean, I know I have epic dreams. I don't remember most of them when I wake up, but I know that that was important, whatever it was, something I was ready to have, taken care of. Great, do it while I'm asleep.
Yeah. It cleared it, it connected it, it
Yeah,
figured it
whatever.
out. Here's a metaphor. Yep.
Right, right. And the other time I love to do that same kind of thing is just in the morning when I'm like my alarm's gone off, but I've snoozed it and I'm not really awake and I'm not really asleep in that dream time. That's another great time to just throw a question out, and maybe it'll bubble up then, or maybe later in the day, or who knows.
Yeah. And it just kind of comes out.
Mhm.
So, Laurin, I have loved our conversation, and you are just such a rich wealth of insight. And if someone wants to get started on their healing journey, looking into what some would call alternative, even though modern medicine has only been around really for about 300 years, versus these alternative have been around for thousands.
Right.
Um, but if someone wants to get into that so-called alternative medicine, healing modalities, Chinese medicine,
Mhm.
um, where do we start?
Well, following your intuition about which one of those, feels good to you is a great place to start. These days, you can go online and find people locally, if that's what you really prefer. If you don't care about locally, then you can cast the net broader. And again, I advocate using your intuition. I had 2 calls last week from new people who said, "I saw your picture on your website, and I just knew I had to work with you." So, that you do need to kind of judge that. Everybody who does this kind of work does it in their own way and comes at it with their own life experience. So, for me, I find I attract a lot of people who have had difficult parents and have had to work through that process. And also people with difficult menopause, childhood trauma, those sorts of things seem to be attracted to me. Um, but you're welcome to call me, and I'm happy to have a free consultation with you. And it's not for me to sell myself to you, but for you to ask whatever you want to ask. And I have a lot of friends who work in different modalities that are both local here in Williamsburg, Virginia, where I am, but also do distance work. And I've got an expanding network that are all over the place too. So I love to connect people. So, and I don't want to work with somebody if I'm not the right person for them. And so I will be happy to connect you with other people as well. So who work in other modalities. Yeah. So, and that's usually the best place. Reach out to somebody who's doing this kind of work and just have a conversation with them. And everybody I know will say, yeah, I can do this for you. Or, I don't think I'm the person, but I know somebody who I think would be a good fit for you. And, so many of us are women. We like to connect with each other that way. So yeah, that would be my suggestion. And if you want to call with me, if you just go to my website, there is a place on there in the contact area where you can book a free call. You don't even have to contact me first. You can go right to a calendar and book your call.
Oh, look at that automation system coming into play.
I'm such a fan of automation. I want to make it as easy for everybody as possible. So yeah.
And that's the point of systems.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not about us, it's about how much ease can we allow for our customers and clients to find us.
Yes.
Life is hard enough as it is.
Yeah, I don't want to put up any barriers, or you don't have to email and let's find a time. And no, here's the times that I'm available. Which one works for you? So yeah, I love that's another Trello and Calendly, my 2 favorite systems.
Yep. That integration and the ability to integrate with Zoom. Yep. It's a game changer. Like when you start creating those integrations and having those systems, it just, I don't know about you, but for me, like I had so much more clarity. And then it also allowed me to work with a team of 4 people that I have now. Mm-hmm. And because otherwise they can't read what's going on in your mind.
Right. And I'm not a linear thinker, so it's really hard for me to lay things out. So Yeah. In Trello, I have a card for every person who comes on my website or on my podcast. And we have every step of the process on there and assigned to whoever it's supposed to be. And we check it off so we can all look at it and know where we are. Amazing.
I'm so proud. I'm so proud because I know that that was not the case when we first started.
No. And it's so much easier for me because I don't have to try to keep it all in my head or on the bits and pieces of paper on my desk.
Yeah, like on the random post
Yeah.
notes and things. Yep. It changes the game when you put everything into one space and make
it opens up space for as you put it, the zone of genius. It opens up so much space and actual time to create new things or to work with more clients or to do a podcast.
Yeah. Because if I had to honestly think about like, oh, well, after this interview, I need to go up and upload this to Kajabi and then, do the show notes and do this, like all those other pieces. If I'm thinking, I'm like, I would not get anything else done for today other than this interview.
Right.
And fortunately, I have a team and I have the systems in place so that I know that as soon as this is done, this box right here, this is zone of genius, baby.
Yep, that's right. That's right. And that's what I keep saying to my team is I want us to get to the place where I invite the guests and I talk to the guests and record it. And then I hand it off to you to do all the rest of it. Because that's not my forte. That's not what I want to be doing. I love this part. That's my heart work there. So yeah.
Yeah. And that's where you share your voice and where you are using that heart-centered, God-given gift that is for you for what you're supposed to do in this world.
Yeah.
And for the message that you're supposed to bring.
Right.
Oh, Laurin, I just adore you. And I mean, the fact that I have been able to be such a glorious witness to your transformation is it's been such an honor.
Well, and I have to thank Laura Zealand, who had you on when I was working with her, and you pitched to us, and I'm like, you're still talking, and I'm like, I want that session. I don't care how much it is. I want that session.
And just to like Laura Zealand and I, last year we did a masterclass, and it was on that masterclass that masterclass had failed originally the first time because my father had recently passed. And with time zone changes and things. So it just goes to tell you like beauty and profit can come from mistakes because because of a time zone thing, and my father passing and everything, I thought, oh, well, the class was at this time. And she was like, oh, no, it's not. It's actually this time. And so we had to reschedule. And it was because we rescheduled that Laurin was on the call. So everything, like divine timing. And trusting in that money can be in the mistakes that you make, so long as you don't define yourself by the mistakes and you learn from them.
Right. And that is something I have really learned in the last several years is that I just trust if it's not working, okay, something better's on the way, and that takes so much of the stress out of it and the blame out of it. It's like, I did everything I could, and it's not working. So I'm going to release that and just see what comes next.
Yeah. Eradicating that self-blame.
Think in time, it's something better, so so just don't, that getting rid of that self-blame, because that's then going to block some of the good stuff coming at you. So it's just like, okay, whatever, bring it on.
Thinking Laurin.
Right. Okay.
Are you ready to enter in to the realm of rapid fire?
Yes.
Yes, bring it on.
Bring it on.
So who is your favorite female character in a book or a movie? And this can include your own authorship.
Actually, that one's easy. Jo March in Little Women. I read the book for the first time when I was 11. I read it every year for several years after that. And I was in love with Jo because she was just herself. She was strong. She was, kind, but she was a writer. I didn't even know I wanted to be a writer. And I loved partly that she had this name that allowed her to be strong. Joe, she was known as Joe instead of, I think it was Josephine. And actually, when my daughter was born, I loved Samantha for her because the nickname was Sam, and it was a strong boy's nickname, and that's what she goes by. So that character has been a powerhouse in my mind for years and years and years, decades and decades.
What woman would you want to trade places with just for a day, be in their body, live in their brain, alive or dead? I mean, obviously not dead, like now dead, but like dead
Right.
back in present, back when they were alive.
Right. When they were alive. Oh, that's a good one. Oprah Winfrey comes to mind. I'm not a big follower of hers, but I love the kinds of conversations that she has and the access to so many interesting people. And I love her story because she's got a really powerful story about how she got to where she is. So I think I'd love to spend a day as Oprah and just experience that power and that gift that she has for conversation with meaningful people.
Mm. How would you have your success at twice the speed?
Mm.
What would you have done differently?
I would have gotten rid of my fears a whole lot earlier. I wish I had gotten rid of my fears when I was like in my teens, because I carried them well into my 40s. And I know that I learned a lot on that journey that is useful to me. But if I had my druthers, I would have gotten rid of those fears much earlier and gotten into this work much earlier, because this is where I've been headed, and it's just such a happy place. So yeah, that's what I would have done.
What is your morning routine to set you up for success?
Well, I'm getting up earlier now. Thank you, Kim, I think.
You're welcome.
So I used to sleep till about 8:15. Now, after my kids left the house, of course, I'm getting up about 7 now, and I give myself about 15 minutes to lie in bed and just kind of, just be there and let my brain start thinking and let my body wake up slowly, but only about 15 minutes instead of the hour I was doing before. And then I get up and I get dressed for whatever the day holds. And if I'm not going to be on Zoom, that usually means I'm looking for comfort. you know? And then I grab my coffee, I put it in a coffee thermos, and I come up to my office and I put it in the thermos because I'm not going to drink it right away, but I want it immediately when I'm ready for it. And I meditate. And some days it's short because I've got a client coming at 9 or something, but I try to do at least 20 minutes. And I have also picked up a morning practice that includes channeling afterwards in a journal. And so I don't always have time to do both, but I always try to make sure I do the meditation words, because that really does set me up for a good, calm entry into my day, and I can carry that forward.
And what is your nightly routine to set you up for success in the morning?
It consists of a lot of just unwinding, and I do that mostly on my couch in front of the TV, watching something that is uplifting or familiar. I watch a lot of shows I've watched before because they're just familiar and they're comfort watches. My puppy is always on the couch next to me, so I rub her tummy. We dim the lights. My husband goes up to watch his TV because we don't like to watch the same things. And I spend at least an hour sort of in that space. And that it calms everything down. It lets me kind of drain out my energy of the day. But then the other piece of that is when I do get in bed, I read fiction for about 20 minutes or so. And that gets any others of my own personal stories out of my head. So that's my end of day. And
I love that you give yourself permission to watch Netflix. Like I am not
I'm a TV-holic, I admit it.
Yeah, I am not of the belief system that you need to cut these things out of your life forever, like, and only read personal development books and whatnot.
No.
I think there is a time and a place, and to be able to use and have Netflix and TV with discernment is, it can be a very powerful tool.
I don't watch anything that's like murders or anything. No. But I learned a long time ago that it takes me about an hour to 2 hours some nights to get my head to quiet down. And so watching something familiar also doesn't require more thinking.
Mm,
So I think that's why it's a comfort watch, and that's why it works for me. So
awesome. What would you define to be your queendom?
my queendom, ooh, it's expanding. My queendom is first and foremost my healing work and the clients that I get to work with. That's like my inner counsel there. And then I just love getting my voice out. I love talking to people about what I do. So I don't know if that's what you mean by your queendom, but I feel like that's how I reign, so.
It's always up for interpretation. And lastly, Laurin, how do you crown yourself?
Oh, travel, especially in this year, we finally were able to travel again. So we spent 3 weeks in Hawaii in February. Oh my God, wonderful. We're going to go, my husband and I are going to go hike the Tour de Mont Blanc in the Alps next month with some friends. So it's nature, outdoors, travel. Those are the things that I really, really crown myself with. It's like the birthday cake at the end of the year. So, but we're doing it more and more. So, yeah. So.
Yep. Now that the world's opening back up again. Yep.
And we're not wasting time. We used to go, yeah, no, we should do that sometime. Now it's like, no, can we do it in May? Yeah, we'll do it in May.
Yep. Yep. I
So,
think if the pandemic taught us anything, it's like the appreciation for doing those things that we enjoy, and travel for me, like you, is a core value.
it's a core value. My mother actually took me, she was a travel agent. She took me, my grandmother, my great aunt, they'll do this quick, to Europe for 2 months when I was 11 years old. I got the bug.
Yep. Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's, for me, the travel is the thing. And especially after spending 2 years in this house, which I love this house, but, so, I've been out to visit my daughter in Seattle. I've been to Alabama to visit my aunt, my favorite aunt down there. My cousins and my aunts had a reunion up in Delaware recently, all of that, like in the last 6 months. Yeah, so that's my gift. I'm going to work hard and go somewhere.
I love that you crown yourself with travel. Laurin, how can we find you? How can we work with you? Plug yourself, queen.
Okay. So if you go to heartlightjoy.com, and it's light, L-I-G-H-T, like shining your light, you can find everything about me there. And you can find the free call there. There will be the pop-up if you want my top 3 favorite ways to communicate with your guides. I have several different ways that I can work with you. I can work in one-on-one, one at a time, I should call it, sessions, where we can do healing work for you. And I'm particularly good with pain, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional pain. That seems to be one of my real gifts, is working with relieving that and releasing that. I also have a program that Kim pushed me into to finally launching after a year of thinking about it, that I call Reveal, Release, Transform. And it is an intensive 8-session time with me. And it's a combo of healing and mentoring that I am finding just is truly transformational. Everybody who's gone through it has had a big change for the positive in their life. And I adore that program. It's such a powerful program. So you can find out information about that as well. Reveal, Release, Transform, working with me one-on-one. And I will have another program that I'm calling, I can't even remember anymore, Unleashing the Power of Your Purpose, getting clear on why you are here. That's going to be somewhere in between one off and the bigger program. And that will be coming very soon, because I'm going to launch it in beta probably in the next 2 weeks. So, so all of that is on my website. So that's the central point. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, but you can get the links on website.
Laurin, it has been a pleasure chatting with you, connecting with you.
I always love talking with you.
You are truly, same here. You are truly such a light, and you just the good-hearted desires of what you are putting out into this world and what you want to create. I am so excited for what you're going to create in this next decade, because it's going to be epic.
Yeah.
As always, my fellow sovereigns, own your throne, mind your business, because your reign is now.